All right, check this out. Switcheroo. Really digging these little brackets for these wrist straps, truth be told. Okay, here we go. Silverback. All right, you can see that's a pretty tight group. Let's go down here, talk about this a little bit. A question we're asked quite a bit is, how come I have a slight variation between my silverback or my Nock to it, or take it one step further, the backstrap? Okay, so depending on a few different things, this could change your impact point, or your impact point can be, like for me, almost identical. Okay, and so a few factors play into this. Now, for the silverback and the Nock to it, both of these were built to mirror each other in how they're shaped and also the direction those hooks open. The backstrap, on the other hand, opens the opposite direction, because a lot of people have this much closer to their face or their jawline, just based on how most index finger people shoot and their anchor position. So this hook opens the opposite direction. Because that hook opens the opposite direction of these other two, a backstrap is usually going to be left of the other ones. And again, it's because of the direction that the hook opens. So if you have a backstrap, you just need to know what that is, count the number of clicks that you might have to turn in order to zero into the left if you are switching back and forth, and just write that down on a piece of tape on the side of your bow. You know, if you want to put something that just says backstrap, 9 clicks left. Now, when it comes to the handheld releases and the variation that you might see here, now this is relative to a couple different things. One of the things is going to be how you pull through your shot. See, with the silverback, this is forcing you to shoot with the type of dynamic force that I really teach and that I promote, where you're either letting off your safety or you're shaping the trigger on the Nock to it, and you're thinking about the tip of that elbow pulling backwards, and you're building pressure against the back wall. So when you draw that bow back and it stops, you're continuing to pull for a few pounds harder against that back wall till it breaks. Well, if on a thumb release, a thumb trigger activated release, like a Nock to it, if with this release, you're not pulling through, but you're just literally like waiting and waiting and aiming and then making it go off, well, you're trying to compare a static force against the back wall of your bow cam to a dynamic force, which is what you're forced to do with this. Now, with the hinge release, the same thing is true. Some people just rotate the hand and they aim and they just move the hand till it goes off. Again, that's going to be a static force. Whereas if you're continually trying to build pressure in the way that I teach and relax the index finger, so I'm building pressure back as I'm relaxing the finger, and that shot is going off again with a dynamic force. You can see me coming out of my shots. When you're comparing dynamics to dynamics and when you're comparing statics to statics, the impact points are going to come closer together. However, if you're trying to compare static to dynamic, those are going to give you different groupings regardless of the type of release you shoot. So the takeaway here is really you want to learn with both of these releases how to pull through your shot the same as what these two releases force you to do. And a lot of people don't do that. When they switch over to a thumb activated trigger, or some people when they switch over to the hinge, they just manipulate the hand or they just build pressure on the thumb, but they never drive through. So those two types of dynamics against that back wall are gonna give you differences in impact. What you want is you wanna be able to force yourself to have that same dynamic shot with every type of release, because that is really what unlocks the completely different level to archery and puts you on a level like most of the pros are, where they have a surprise shot and they're coming through that shot. Now, always keep in mind a few other things that can affect accuracy if you're comparing different releases to other releases. Certainly the length from where the index is to that head, which again, the reason the too smooth was made the way that it was made is you can see here when you lay them on top of each other, those 2 points are going to be almost in the same spot. And certainly that's how it is if you compare the silverback and the Nock to it. Now I'm going to give you one other thing that can certainly change this variation, and that is going to be your string tension. So if you have a bow that naturally has pretty weak string tension, or if you have a bow that doesn't have a solid stop and you have kind of a spongy or a pliable wall when you're at full draw, then that's going to give you a variation in impact too, because sometimes you might be pulling a lot harder on that stop than the next time. So having a solid stop is going to help that consistency. Now, if you've backed these limbs out, or if you have a 70-pound bow but you've backed it down to 60 pounds, well, once you take a lot of that pressure off the limbs, your string tension is going to be much weaker. And because of that, you being dynamic one time and then static another time is going to have, again, a multiplier to the variation. Honestly, one of the things that you really need to keep in mind is what makes you group the best. I found that dynamic force makes me group the best. Static force does not. My static, these start to spread apart if I'm static. So focus on what gives you the best groups, and if you have to sight in to that group or to that release that's putting you there, that's totally okay. Just make yourself a note, and you should be able to maybe just move a little left or move a little right. The other thing too is really focus when you're changing from one release to another release, really focus on the consistency of your facial pressure on the arrow, because if one time with the wrist strap you're anchoring way down here and that arrow shaft's pushing against your chin, but then with your handhelds you're up here and your arrow is off your chin, those are going to give you two different lefts and right impact variations as well. So compare apples to apples, try to be dynamic for every one of these releases, try to keep your string tension as tight as possible, and these babies are going to suck right together and you're going to have an awesome time regardless of your choice of release.